mention here because we're all, concerned about the hurricanes and getting the water and taking care of your dogs and all that, which are, rightfully human beings are the first priority. But for those of us in the book business, I know I've heard Steve mention the fact that he's going to start moving the books from behind you. You can see these are some of my reference books. I was telling Alan that I now have almost 250 of my reference books cataloged, but without bothering to turn my screen, I have another, 100 or so over there. I'm working on my for sale books are all cataloged, but a hurricane water is just not a good thing for a book, and it's coming through windows or blown off roofs or whatever. I mean, we
let me know when you start to see anything disappearing from this apartment. All I see is stuff coming in from this hoarder's house. This hoarder's house, I mean, what he has found in there is unbelievable. And I haven't been able to go out there, but next week I'll be able to go with him.
Have you even seen it, Edie, or were you broken up the whole time?
He took me out there one day. I walked in about 4 feet. It was not safe for me to go I mean, when I tell you things were stacked up higher than me, you were like in an alley of stuff, and I couldn't. There was no path. There was no way to get through without climbing over, and of course I couldn't do it with my toe. I mean, and so I couldn't. But Stephen brought home wonderful treasures, one of which I'm going to show today on my segment.
Oh, good.
Okay. Well, I see.
We are rolling here. We want to welcome everybody to the Book Lovers Rendezvous. The Rare Book Cafe is a virtual cafe available anywhere in the world, and we welcome you to the show. We want to say hi to Donna, who's greeting us from Boca Raton, and also from Hank Holt. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being a part of the Rare Book Cafe community. We today is Saturday, September 14th, 2019. It's 223 days until the next Florida Antiquarian Book Fair, which is in April 2020, April 26th or 24th through the 26th in 2020. And a little later, I'm going to be talking to you about how you can get some tickets. Tickets for the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. But first, I want to welcome Thorne Donnelly from Liberty Books in Jupiter, Florida. And our queen of miniature books,
I love it,
Eisenstein, and she is in Miami Beach, Florida. Welcome to both of you. We'll be talking with a little later with Stephen Eisenstein. He will be joining us a little later, and Lindsay Thompson is back in the control room on the board, making everything go so that we can have this program here. And I just want to say something about the program that it takes a lot to make the program happen. It's an effort on the part of a lot of people, and we want to sincerely thank all of them. We want to certainly thank the folks who are here and are here regularly, Thorne and Edie and Stephen and Lindsay, and we want to thank our friends out in the world who are regular viewers here, and we appreciate your support, your help, and we just we can't thank you enough for being part of it. I want to say hi to Sophia. I see she's has joined us. Thank you very much. I want to ask anybody who is watching us today live or watching us on the replay to share this program out with people who will get something out of it. Today we have a very special program. We're going to be doing we're going to try to share some knowledge and Thorne and Stephen will be here sharing some of the things that they've learned in years of book collecting and being uh, rare and collectible book dealers. But first, let's check in with Edie and see what's new in the world of miniature books. We'll come
Thank
back
you.
in a little while. We're going to come back to. I'm going to be mentioning the limerick contest, and that's going to be the way that you get to win some tickets to the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. I'll be talking more about that at the end of the program, and so we will come back to that. And in the meantime, let's go to Edie and tell us what is happening with you in the world of teeny tiny books.
Well, it's been a very interesting week because my toe is done and I'm back on the road. Watch out, drivers. But
Uh-oh.
I'm back on my feet and ready to go. I had received from the Miniature Book Society, from Dorina La Valle, if I am mispronouncing her name, I apologize. But she sent me the Miniature Book Society competition and exhibition catalog. One of the things that you get as a perk when you join this society for only $40 outside of the Tampa Bay area uh, are things like this that come in the mail. And so these are all the books that were in the competition, their descriptions, and who did them, how they did them, etc. And she also sent out a miniature book limited to 400 copies for members of the Miniature Book Society.
Oh,
And
wow.
it is, yes, and it is a miniature book by Charlotte Bronte, The Scale of Genius. And it talks about all of the miniature books that you did. So that this came in this envelope together with the thing. My $40 check for my dues is made out and ready to be mailed. And I can tell you that during the Miniature Book Society meeting in April, there, and I'm going to quote from a letter that I received from them, from Jerry Morris, that on Saturday, April the 25th, at 2020 at 400 Beach Restaurant, there is a banquet at night for members of the Miniature Book Society
All right.
and those that are in attendance at the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. I don't know if I'm letting a secret out, but you heard it first on the cafe. And
You
Oh,
are forgiven.
and so what I was going to talk about today besides that was how we store our books. Now, miniature books, you want to find things, and Stephen, during this wonderful, wonderful house of the hoarder, is finding little boxes like this.
oh my.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, it's really meant as a jewelry box, but can't you see a miniature book adequately and beautifully displayed in there?
You can put a whole
Bill,
library in there.
almost, almost. Speaking of a whole library, Bill Poston is one of my favorite people that I ever met at the Miniature Book Society. And he had made me a miniature barrister bookcase with glass doors that go up and down, the same as a lawyer's cabinet. And I called Bill and he gave it to me. And I called him and asked if he was still making them. And he said altogether he had made about 20 of them. They are around, some he sold, and mine was the first he gave away. And he doesn't make them anymore because it takes too much time and too much work. But I told him that I was going to thank him again today for having made it. And it's one of the treasured possessions that I have to house my miniature books, which is absolutely phenomenal. So, Bill, thank you, thank you. Now, at this hoarder's house, Stephen found several of these mantle clocks that are no longer in operation. This one was from Brooks Brothers, And I looked it up online, and sure enough, I found a picture of it, but this one doesn't work. And he's going to take out the clock stuff and leave it for me with shelves for miniature books for part of the new display. Steve's got a great eye on how to do it. Also, in this hoarder's house, there were many cloth boxes, such as this one. Now, this has no covers on the front, but won't that be a beautiful miniature book display of a variety of things? And Stephen is going to be doing that for me. This one on the back, it says Raymante Waits or something like that. Obviously meant for something else, but not for miniature book. So my suggestion today is when you go into a thrift shop, when you go into a garage sale, when you're looking for miniature books, walk around in the thrift shop to where they have the stuff. And where they have the stuff, if you look there with the mind of displaying your miniature books, you may find some little treasure that you say, oh, that would house my miniature and fill in the blank collection. So that's my contribution of the day. I want to thank the people that, especially Doris, that sent me this from the fair. The Miniature Book Society is just a wonderful, wonderful organization, well worth the dues, and I can't suggest joining enough. What is that, Thorne? The Miniature Book Society, what is it?
It is the Bronte sisters, a catalog. It is a bibliography of them. I just
Oh, really?
happen to have, I'm talking about bibliographies this afternoon. And I have, what was the name of the book you were talking about by the Bronte sisters? Which one?
Yes, this is called The Scale of Genius.
Scale of Genius. Okay. That's wondering what
But
it had to say.
she made it for the conclave. And there were 400 copies printed according to the information in the back, the colophon. And this was published to be
Oh, I
given
see.
out at the Miniature Book Society. And I would
Okay.
assume that this is one of the, I'm going to say the leftovers that she gave to the Miniature Book Society that they shipped out to different members,
Sure.
including me. And so I would say that it might be too new, but you see here, you
Oh,
can
it wouldn't
see.
be here. I was just curious what the original version of that book was. I realized that was a recent
Yeah,
publication. There, I was just curious about the original.
and
So it's kind
it's
of funny.
filled with
I had the Bronte sisters sitting on my desk, so I just reached over and grabbed it. That was all.
it's filled with explanations of some of her different miniature books that she made and designed and how she did it, and certainly is going to be an added treasure to my collection.
Oh, it looks
That,
great.
yes.
And
So
I see McKay Watson got his too. Okay, and
Mary Kay
Mary Kay, yeah, we're
shared with
trying to
us,
read and talk at the same time.
shared with us that
You got hers also. Loves it.
and she just so we appreciate you sharing that with us, Mary Kay, and Edie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edie.
and I thank you, and I am a happy camper, and I am
Welcome
going
back
to
to the
turn
world
this. Watch out! I'm on the move again.
Yeah. No fun
And
to break a
Larry,
bone.
if you, Alan, if you see Larry Kellogg, please, give my best to him and his wife because he's going to have a tough time because she broke 2 toes.
Oh my!
That's going to be terrible. So anyhow, I love you guys.
Love you too.
See you all next week. Right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Edie. That was always as interesting, and I'm hoping that Alan will be able to give away a lot of those tickets. Can't give away too many because I think we have to sell some of the tickets, but giving a few of them away is always a pretty good idea.
And
So
this is a good opportunity to mention that. I'm going to come back at the end of the program and mention it as well, but stay tuned to the end of the program so you can learn how you can win tickets to the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair this year is in April 24th, 25th, and 26th in 2020. This next year, 2020. So and there's
Alan, I was
Hey,
just
guys.
wondering something. If I win a bunch of those tickets, you think I can swap them off for my booth rental?
no.
Just thought. Okay.
But hey, you got
Tried.
you're always thinking about it, right?
We keep trying. Hi, Steve. Welcome
Hey,
back.
Thorne. Hey, Alan. Hey, Lindsay. It's good to
From
be
the
here.
haunted house or the hoarder's house or whatever you wish to
Oh,
call
I
it.
don't know what
Wait,
word to use for it.
wait.
Go ahead.
Stephen, you've gotten terribly short. You're so much shorter
Yeah,
than
I'm sorry. Let me
And you've
frame up
got
here.
much furrier too.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are you,
I'm deciding whether I want to keep it. This white used to be red.
are
Looks
you
like a
thinking
bad
maybe that
shadow now.
makes you look like a hoarder? So you don't get so you kind of fit in more.
Yeah. Well, at least you didn't have pets. I am
Yeah.
eternally thankful. I just want you to know something. I was so hungry in between shows that I was going to launch the name of a sandwich with this coffee cup, but I ate it.
You
Because
all
I
right?
was too
Well,
hungry. It was going to be
share that once again. You're welcome to do that.
it was the official. It was going to be the official first sandwich of the cafe, and I was going to call it the BBTJ, bacon, butter, toast, and jelly.
Oh
Oh,
my!
But I
marvelous.
couldn't wait.
Well, if it doesn't have if it needs to have a some sort of a book reference, and I'm sure that you can find one. Absolutely.
Well, they're making cupcakes in the form of books, so maybe they'll make bread in the form of a book.
Well, this next segment of the show, I think, is going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to seeing what you, Stephen, and you, Thorne, have to share with us. What I did was I asked Stephen and Thorne to share with us some of the knowledge that they have gained over the years in book collecting and the book business, the rare and collectible book business. Where everybody who watches this show is a fan in one way or another of this whole crazy idea of collecting old books and being fascinated with old books, and not just books but maps and ephemera of all kinds. And there's just something that happens when particularly when you discover new things that have a wonderful backstory to them. And so I wanted to ask Stephen and Thorne to share with us today a few things. I don't know how if we this is something that it's important to understand that it's taken many years, a lifetime of you gentlemen being in this endeavor, and there's still, I think you would admit, there's still things you don't know, but there's an awful lot that you do know. And so if we can, as the Rare Book Cafe, do some things that will help people who are afflicted with the same things that we are, the same malady that we have, in understanding about the world of collecting, and understanding about the so many details about it, that we will have fulfilled I think an important mission, and to be able to share these things. So with that, let me turn it over to Stephen, who's going to tell us a little bit about what he has brought to this. Donna shares that perhaps you need to write and market a rare book,
We're getting there.
book.
We're getting there. Hi, Donna. Love you. We have Donna and I from a couple of times a week always cross paths in in posts on Facebook. It's a mutual admiration society, out there. It's just fun. And what I'm going to talk about is this. things that we find at estate sales and garage sales. But before I go into the specifics of what I'm going to be talking about, which will be personal papers and things that you might find at a sale, I just want to add one other thing. You know, it used to be in the past, we as book hunters, you know, that's what we went out there for. We were book hunters, and that's all we wanted to know about. As time has gone on and the computer has changed some of the dynamics, a lot of people out there that while we are book hunters first and foremost, we've also learned how to hunt in other areas. And I think that's, you know, one of the things that from time to time on both shows we want to bring up. And those are some of those fringe areas, you know, in terms of other types of collectibles and things like that. So without any further ado, do you want to use Travis Metheny? I'd like to thank you for providing some of the images today. Just to give you a little background, a couple of weeks ago.
We have Travis's. This is a by the way, this Travis told me earlier is a picture of the entire collection of the things that he had been talking to you about, and it's I think he said 100 files. I may be
Yeah.
wrong about that. It may be more than that, but there's an awful lot of material there. There are images of his collection, and there are images of the project that you've been working on as well. So you just say Lindsay has all of those at his disposal back there,
Okay.
so you will be able to go to any of these things and uh, just give him some time because they're linear. You can't just hop from one to another.
Got you. So I'm going to say we see what the scope of the collection is. While I'm narrating, Lindsay, go to the next image and I'll work that into the talk. Okay, what are we talking about in terms of personal papers? Well, it could be anybody and anything from just personal papers of the household. But then you go with diaries, things like that. And even those today, if they're from the right time period and the person, you know, had something that was adaptable to today's times, it gives a reflection of a period of time in life, in that person's life, excuse me, those common diaries and those common photos of the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s are now collectible. There are people who are looking for things like that. It could be, you could go through a couple of hundred files and only find one thing. You can go through hundreds and hundreds of files and find nothing.
What are the
But
things in those kinds of files? What are the things that are going to make them more in demand, more collectible, if you will?
well, first and foremost is the who wrote it. In the case of Travis's, I would compare it to a person that would be known. You know, I mean, it's not going to be known to everybody like a Hemingway or a Fitzgerald, but if you're into the wonderful world of rare books and all kinds of things like that, you know, this personality or a personality with this literary, political, and other, you know, overtures in their life, it's not hard to find it.
Travis
Go ahead.
has shared with us that he estimate in his collection that there are about 2,000 letters of Eugene Fitch Ware in those boxes.
Well, okay, let's move an image. Let's move to the next image because we see what that is. That's some kind of type letter, political cartoons, advertising, letterheads. You know, if you're talking about 19th century and things like that, you know, if this is an original sketch, I can't tell from here. I
No, it is
presume it
not.
is.
It's printed.
No, it's not. Okay, but it's still a printed something of ephemeral nature. It's definitely got some interest in it. How does everything fit together in the package is another thing. Let's go to another image. I know the ones I'm looking for that'll be the most. Okay, let's stop there for a second. You're going to see a lot of stuff like this. It could be long, dull, and boring, or have enough spice in it to keep you going. Let me show the audience something. Well, I know we have image of this coming up later, but this is an example. Oh, I'm not on camera. Let's not do that. Okay. Not a problem. I was trying to improvise here. So let's stick specifically with Travis's on this. In pre-computer days, with a pile of papers, envelopes, and things like that, ephemera. There's some really beautiful ephemera in it. Let's move to the next image, Lindsay. Depending on what it is, we may stay with it again. No, that's going the other way. Um, if um, if you read through these long things, you will find discussions at the time. What was going on politically? What was going on at the time in anything? What was going on? Look, keep moving the images. I'll tell you when to stop. But we're going back to the same ones. I know you see that. Um, is important. The content of the letter. Sometimes you got to read a lot of stuff to get to the interesting content. The fact that this guy had some degree of well-knownness um, contributes to the what will eventually be a price at the end, and the audience that may want to collect this guy, or the institution that might. There are some really interesting images of this. If there's a way to bring that up, of some of the ephemera that was in there, especially from the Masonic Society. I remember seeing those in what information you
That may
sent.
be in the second collection of those, so that's going to be it's going to take a little bit of time for those
Okay,
to
well,
get to those.
randomly,
But before we go any further, for everybody's information, uh, Eugene Ware, of course, was an author, and he was well known in Kansas. He was a newspaper man, and he wrote for the Monitor at Fort Scott, and he later became a lawyer and practiced law in Topeka. He was also in the he was a historian and was involved uh, in researching the history of Kansas, and and Teddy Roosevelt appointed him to the U.S. Pension Commission. So he was well connected politically. He was a writer. He was also a poet. So just to give you some
there we go.
perspective. Okay, here's
That was
the
a great overview, Alan. So, using all those points that Alan mentioned in his history, who did he write to? What did they write and talk about? You, as somebody that finds this archive of 10 or 10,000 letters and forms of correspondence, ephemeral souvenirs, things like that, if you want to know what it's worth, you're going to have to sit down and evaluate it. Now, in the past, if in pre-computer days, and you have it much easier today than in a package, that I would have found in the past, I would have if I had a collection like this, what it would have looked like in the living room the night that I was doing the research would have been an elliptical pile of books ranging from American Book Price's current autograph manuscript section, Dictionary of American Biography. And the reason I point out Dictionary of American Biography, in reading this correspondence, you might not know who the guy was initially, but you're getting a feel in reading these personal letters for the person. He's saying that sounds like somebody that might have done something in history. Now, maybe you're not going to find them in the next book, because back then I had always, just for a guideline, Saunders autograph price guides. Stay with those images. That's one we'll refer to, letterheads. Was another one. So we would build a story. Maybe I wouldn't find him in Sanders, so I couldn't come up with a valuation of what people might pay for a clip signature or a signed photograph or something. But with what might have been in there about him and in the letters in the Dictionary of American Biography, I can start writing about my catalog description of some of the letters. So, that's kind of the approach. And even today, you still need a stamp catalog with some of these, and you need a stampless cover catalog or access to all that information online. A lot of times, if there were free franks, let's say, he had free franking. Who did he write to? What are his franks worth? What are the cancellation marks on some of those envelopes? Just to throw an aside in, sometimes you can have a cancellation mark on a used stamp that the cancellation mark is worth a fortune because it was the first day of its use or it was used very few times, things like that. So let's go back to what we're talking about. Now, in Travis's grouping of things here, I would recommend that it stays together as a collection for a long time if it's going to be sold as a collection or, it's going to be donated as a collection.
And
But
why is
down
that,
the road,
Stephen? Why is that? Why is that?
well, because okay, I'll give you an example of something. There's a gentleman, I believe he's still around. It's Appelfeld Galleries. Now, back in the day of my favorite magazine before Playboy was no, I'm joking, the A.B. Bookman's Weekly. You know, what he advertised, I will buy personal papers of people like this with some degree of note in history to a lot of degree of note in history. They want everything. One of the things that he asked me when I sold him F.H. Conant's papers was, I'm not going to read about you having kept the cherry picked items, from this collection. Everything that I'm getting is what you got. Well, the funny story is I read about the mistake I made, I think, in that collection a few months later, because I still think I sold. It was Monroe, so for one of the presidents in the 1890s. Short career. I should know this with what I'm doing anyway, but I sold the last thing that he might have written while he was alive. It was just a simple order of rank, a lieutenant going to someone else, to another rank. But what I unbeknownstly might not have figured out was it was the last document he signed.
So
So
the
you really
so really knowing doing the research and really knowing the background of whatever it is you have is important, isn't it?
Exactly. And you can't miss a page. Sometimes that one page could be the one thing, in here. So what I was saying is down the road, let's say you can't find this or that, and you start breaking the collections up. Well, obvious. I mean, it's, I know the purists are curling their irons and, yelling at me now, but, eventually you got to do something with it. I'm not talking about your collection, Travis. I'm just saying, something similar. Um, what would you be doing with it? Well, obviously, there's a heavy Masonic element in here, and I would be willing to bet that most of those invitations and celebrations and whatever they're talking about, there's somebody out there that's a regional Masonic collector that would really like to add those to his collection, if not to, the institution. What is in this pile of papers? Lindsay, you can move to the next slide. I'll either stay with it or, yeah. Okay, letterheads. But letterheads, is the letterhead made on simple paper or is it, something that might have been made by the American Banknote Company? Is the letterhead a famous hotel? Is the letterhead? Many questions
So
to ask about.
right away you're off into what different kinds of paper and understanding the quality of the paper and having some knowledge, maybe not detailed knowledge, but some knowledge of the history of paper, if you will, and the various periods that you might be dealing with. Is that right?
Yeah, I agree with that, but Alan, I'll tell you something. I refer to the quality of the paper
Yeah.
more so than the history of the paper. By example, I don't know what hotel that is or what building that is in the background of those images, but is that a historic place that people might be collecting anything and everything from? Is it a famous hotel? Did anything happen? I mean, there's a lot of investigation that goes into this stuff.
But
Let me see.
by history of paper, what I'm talking about is within a certain area that is within a certain time period. knowing what the prominent kinds of paper that would have been in general use. That kind of
Yeah, that's knowledge. It's useful knowledge. It might be overkill if you try and describe that when you're describing a collection. I'd be looking at, if I was going to look at the history of something on that, I'd be looking at the history of how the letterhead was made. Was it something where it's really beautiful artwork and the logo embossed, a different kind of printing, than just a plain printing on a page that, of the time. That's where that kind of history and paper.
a lot of that is Victorian era, it looks like.
Yeah, and move to the next image, Lindsay, and all those other ones, all the other things in there, it's dependent on content. Okay, so what are they talking about in that letter from the Memphis Lodge? I know in one of the letters, I'm not going to, there was no, let's not change it, but there was a type letter that I was able to read some of it much better than this script. And the content of that letter sounded pretty interesting. In terms of how they were talking about politics of the time and political parties and so on. And then you got to ask yourself, yours fraternally, who is this guy? Where did he go in time? Is he anybody that became famous, did anything famous? I mean, that might be a little overkill in the research, kind of grasping at a straw here, but that's how you don't make the mistake that I made. I mean, I took for granted it was just a presidential order, but I didn't investigate it far enough to know that it might have been the last one he signed. This, reading some of the content, we can go to the next image. And then reading the content of this, it's kind of a little tough on my eyes right now, but was there anything in there that was historic? And that's a gorgeous piece, okay? Nice bright color,
Yeah, very
all the
nice.
kind of things that you'll be looking for in an ephemeral piece like that. How rare is that? My PBI, price by instinct on this, I think you could see this in an ephemeral pile anywhere from maybe 15 to $20, with the possibility of a little bit more if it's exceptionally rare and something, phenomenal happened or somebody was at that particular event that day. Hamilton, Borough, Schuyler, Theodore Roosevelt. Yeah, okay. So this one will definitely be interest to a Roosevelt collector. Um, Floyd Clarkson, is that Kelly Clarkson's great great grandpa? I
No,
don't know. No, okay. But anyway, so something like that is a nice piece, and it looks like you have many of them. It adds another dimension to the collection. I can't stress enough that you gotta. How do you price it as a collection, Travis? Good question. All right, let's switch to another image, and maybe I can add some more with that. Um, Well, you would take you know what I did, and let me tell you by what I did it with first. I had 7 zero boxes, medium-sized metal zero boxes of papers that belonged to F.H. Conant, who was the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury under Lincoln, and one before and one after. The correspondence was all over the place. As I was going through it, I looked at it as, okay, I don't have a collection, I got a lot of parts. And I took pricing notes as to the individual sum total of the parts. So in your case, as you're going through it, this is the 35th letter. Did anybody in that, group of letters, was it anybody of note? Is there a couple of autographs that are desirable? Is there enough historic content to say, okay, just as a regular letter with a stamp because it's in the collection, you would credit, $3, $5, $7, $10 for the letter and so on and so forth. And you just kept kind of, and I'm going to use the word a little bit insane, running total of the parts. But basically, if there was something there that I could nail and say, okay, I've seen lots of 25 invitations of this type, or funerary notice, or go for. So that's how I do it. I build up on the individual sum total of the parts. Then there's collection value. And if I may, this was a very interesting conversation for me, not just on air here this week, but in the appraisal that I'm working on. The individual sum total of the parts, when you have a unique collection, has what would be called in an appraisal added value with merit. You know, you're saying because this is a collection and has added value, and then as the appraiser, you're explaining the merit of it. A collection, can have added value after you get to the sum total of the parts. And what would be some of the factors in that? The possibility or impossibility of recreating that collection today. How many years and hours did it put to, get that collection together if it was a form collection? In your case, it looks like it was just somebody's archives, but, all those things are considered. Travis, I know you can hear me. Did you do any research at this point where you found anything that, if it was just that one thing in itself, would have been a couple of $100 or more? Just asking as a guide mark along the way. And we will wait as you answer. Um, so there's a lot of factors involved. Content, and condition is probably the most important factor. And then, you got to throw in the art and eye candy factor when you come into the ephemera or the bill headings, things like that. For those of you, I'm sure everybody knows what it is when you start seeing letterheads that are, engraved or printed by the American Banknote Company, or maybe a stock certificate. It makes a big difference between that and a nicely printed piece of stationery. I'll take another image, and it goes on, but basically, House of Representatives. Again, who was he? What did he go on to do? But this is the one. Is this the one where he's talking about? Yeah, this is the one. The content in this is interesting for 1888. I'm heartily grateful for your kind favor of the 15th. What politicians do favor? To which I've been unable to make earlier reply because of the pressure. But so it goes on and on. You say, and in which judgments concur. By this time, you will have seen my published letter. So, what kind of controversy did that letter stir? Which please accept as an answer to yours. I never was anything but a Republican and never will be. Personally, I would very much prefer to keep out of the contest. But if the feeling in the district is as represented to me, I am very much like a piece of bark in a mill race where all the bark can do is to get through the rapids and as safely as possible. In view of the urgent solicitations of many of the staunchest Republicans and best friends I have in the district, there seems no other course to pursue, and that letter is candidly, sincerely, and precisely what I feel takes the turn which some very cool heads assure me that will, in spite of my thing, blah blah blah. Okay, I'm getting eye strain looking at it. But that's interesting content. How many more letters are like that? And then your assignment from that letter is, what was he running for? Did he take the
Yeah.
job? Did he get it? What went on because this guy became elected? It's like, it's a bad analogy, but it's like the Burgermeister copies of Mein Kampf. If it was signed by a town Burgermeister, what did he do? Did he become more infamous after the war? What did these guys do after this political situation? Now, you can go into a house and find a whole bunch of boring stuff. Don't give up. You have a really good collection here, Travis. When you get to the very last page, you'll have an idea as to what it's worth. As I said to you, and whenever you want to talk about it midstream, I guess we're doing some of it now. But you might only find one paper in a whole thing, but it might make it worthwhile. I was at a sale in Hallandale Beach, Florida, years ago. There was a box full of papers, and notebooks and stuff. What it turned out was this guy's name was Jack Levine. Well, Jack Levine from Hallandale Beach. I don't know, what did he do? Own a store there or something? I don't know. Starting to read it, and Jack Levine was the guy who wrote the original drafts of the National Recovery Act. I instantly sold that for way more than I bought it for. So, you never know what's in these boxes of papers. I can go on forever on this, but research, research, research. Break it down into its components. The signatures, the content, philatelic value, if there is any, ephemeral value. And to answer a question that I didn't answer when we spoke off air, take notes during it and try doing a running total as if you didn't have the full collection. You're just taking notes along the way. I hope that helps. But we can go through the rest of the images and do some narrating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
more
why don't you go
ephemeral.
ahead and do that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Thorne. I didn't realize it. I guess I really got into this.
No, you're on a roll. Go for it.
Thanks.
Like I can do my stuff another week. It's so fun.
Okay. Well, okay. It was more of the same. Let me show you something I found that initially I did take for granted. Okay. This is a notebook of exactly kind of what Travis had: letters, bills. I'm sorry, we're getting a bad image
So
here.
is that, Stephen? Is that the
Yeah, Miami.
that we have the images of?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So thanks,
Give
Lindsay.
give Lindsay a moment to. I guess that's it
Sure.
right there. Okay, he's got that up.
So what that is the Miami Quarterbacks Club in 1938 through mid 40s.
I was
It's
fascinated with some of that. Go ahead. I want to let you go
no,
ahead
go ahead,
with it.
go ahead,
With
go ahead.
there were some sections that I just thought were, and I think this is this the one. No, that's
That's
not.
well, that's
But
mentioning
I know you're going to
Loomis.
get to that. So go ahead and.
Yeah, okay. Well,
put it
who's
up.
mentioned in that letter is important. The whole notebook is an almost who's who in early Miami of sports, news, political figures. Loomis, Gardner Malloy, who eventually became the tennis pro at the Fountain Blue after having a TV career, Adventures in Paradise, for those of you who may or may not
And
remember it.
on the members of the quarterback club, I mean, it was a fascinating list. But one of the things that jumped out at me was that the most represented organization was the Herald, the Miami Herald. There were 4 people from the Herald uh, who were members of the quarterback club.
You want to hear something funny? The University of Miami was not interested in this.
They weren't. Well,
No, they saw it at the book show. As a matter of fact, I've had this for quite a while. The year they bought the elephant hunting book that belonged to Carl Fisher, they had the option to get that too, but they took the book, not this. I was very surprised about that.
from
Um,
a newspaper standpoint, I was also interested to see that the Miami Daily News was, and of course that's the afternoon paper, was the afternoon paper, and
Was.
yeah, it was, and what what was clear there is that there was only one representative from the news. So, and by the way, a personal note there. I worked at the Miami News for several years, and they closed right after I left. But I had nothing to do with that. I just want to make that clear.
They all say that. Yeah.
well,
Just
okay.
follow orders, boss. Really.
I don't remember what this was. Not a front page letter, I don't think, but some of the front page letters until I got to about page 6 or 7 were kind of boring. I said, "Oh, is this what the rest of the notebook's going to be? It's not going to be that impressive." But it got better in many ways. If you could, Lindsay, whenever you can move an image, when I got to this page where it started talking 1938 on how there was a request, and a lot of people doing it, for Negro seating at the games, and how they phrased it and talked about it. I knew at that point in time this had more historic significance than the first couple of pages. And as I got further through it, It did. It's funny. I used to have probably 120 index cards hanging out of the bottom of that book with notes, but after moving it around, eventually they came off, and it marked and highlighted. This is a letter where this famous guy, they're wondering how they're going to get their money back from him that they lent him, through the club, and they're having budget problems or something. But what also caught me, that kept me really going was, and it didn't take long to do that. I think we're back with
That's Travis's collection.
Travis's.
Uh,
What got me was to repeat it. How many famous names were there? It was just a plethora of very
it really
famous
was.
names.
It was.
Miami.
I was fast.
Yeah,
Having
yeah,
spent a little bit of time in Miami. I was quite fascinated with the
yeah. And I can
but
honestly say, I'm sorry, Al. Go ahead.
this I think you had that must be your note on there that mentions the race issue, and I think it was uh, a resolution by the organization that made the request for for basically a Negro section in for the football games.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was the term.
and anyway, I don't know if we'll see that, but fascinating material.
These are the kind of things that you have to keep your eyes open. Usually, if you say, "Hey, how much are the personal papers?" You get a $5 to $10 price per a box of them. It's worth it to speculate on. You just never know what you're going to find, and all you got to do is find a couple of good things in it. It's worth speculating on. It's worth kind of keeping your eyes and ears open for them. And if you ever have any questions, we'd love to help you about it.
Well, it looks like we have
Yeah.
run out of time here. Thorne has graciously yielded his time, and we will return to Thorne on another week, perhaps next week. But we will
Some future date. I've got it already filed away. We're
return
good.
to because he has a lot of good things to share as well. But before we go, I wanted to share something with you, and let me get the right thing here.
Are these my free tickets? Oh, goody, goody.
This is how you or what did I do? This is how you or um,
Someone who's perhaps doesn't have a booth there and might like to go to the show for free. That would work.
Okay, so I think this will come up here shortly.
Yeah, here we
This
go. The
is
limerick.
how you can how you can win tickets to the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair, March 24th. I'm sorry, April 24th through the 26th, 2020. And all you got to do is just be clever. Write we're giving away free tickets if you write a clever lyric. That is a limerick, which is a lyric after all. And so we've given you an opportunity to understand what kind of limericks we're looking for. We're looking for things that have some relationship, of course, to books and reading and that sort of thing. We want it to be original. We want it to be funny. We don't want it to be mean.
Oh no! Come
Take
on.
me out to the book fair. Rare books by
There you
binding
go.
and
You're on your
paperbacks.
way. You're on
Can
your
I
way.
win?
So this is the no, but this is an example. There once was a lady from Fargo who had a young sister in Largo, the local tie there, Largo. Okay. They came to the fair, found lots to like there. She's sending her books home as cargo. which is what we want to see. Is we want to see people having.
Did you write that?
Did I write that? Someone who will remain nameless wrote that.
What is the book cargo from Fargo? She asked.
What? Now
Hey, come on.
there's strict
My
rules.
third hour on air.
There are strict rules about how a limerick goes, and of course there's the AABBA rhyme scheme, and meter. The meter is important as well. So just
Was
keeping
an old lady who sold books in a shoe.
no.
She had so many books she didn't know what to do.
That's so. So that will. Those are the things that you just got to keep in mind, and I think that there will be some great opportunities here for some people to win tickets to the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. All you got to do is send in your lyric. You can send it in to Florida Book Fair 2, numeral 2, Florida Book Fair 2 at gmail.com. Or you can enter it right here on the Rare Book Cafe page. Or you can enter it on the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair page. So any of those places, we'll be watching for them, and you may have an opportunity to win. So
I've been working at the book fair. And now I'm going to go get a job at McDonald's.
because that worked out so well, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ellen. Thorne, Lindsay.
Sharing with us your thoughts and ideas and your expertise. Thank you, Thorne, for yielding your time and having
Thanks, buddy.
having great amount of material for another book fair. Or
Oddly enough, Alan, I have yet to been able to type. I'm on public and host. I was able to type on host. As you can see, I answered you a couple of times. So the website and the Instagram address I was going to post, which would have added a great deal to it, I cannot do. So somebody should notify that.
That's good to know. That should be a function that works within.
Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to reply to Travis or anybody, if you know, none of us were able to reply to any of the people here today. If anybody else tried, but I couldn't.
So that's
we're waiting for that one.
After the program is off, if you want to go in and add something, if you have something to add, but that's a good point, and we'll have to bring that up. We are here for the love of books, and so thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Ciao, guys. Have a good weekend, everybody.
So what do you have planned this weekend?